Jay, this reader's written into us asking whether he should buy a Maruti Celerio or the Tata Tiago, both petrol manual top spec.
I don't remember comparing them. Do we have an answer for him?
No, it's a really interesting question.
I think we should give him a nice detailed answer. What do you think?
That sounds like a plan.
And to get a clear answer to that question, we needed both of them in the flesh. So here they are, the 2022 Maruti Celerio and the Tata Tiago facelift. Let's pick a winner.
These are budget hatchbacks, alright, but which one makes the stronger first impression?
The Celerio looks a lot more youthful thanks to its rounder, curvier styling.
One design cue that just doesn't make sense is the execution of the front door handles with the request sensors and the keyhole looking like an afterthought.
The Tiago was originally launched in 2016 and this is the facelift version which retains the clean-cut styling which still looks classy and timeless.
The car we have here is the 2020 iteration. The 2022 version also gets projector headlamps, LED DRLs as well as chrome tri-arrow elements on the front grille.
So then it is safe to say that the Tiago looks more premium than the Maruti. Now let's get behind the wheel for a closer evaluation.
Okay, so welcome to the interiors of the Celerio 2022. Before we start, first thing I wanted to do is find me the power window switch for the driver's side. Oh yeah.
Oh, it's here.
Yeah. The first time I sat in the car, it took me like a good 2-3 minutes to locate for these switches.
The Celerio's dashboard design didn't quite make a strong first impression either.
The layout of the dashboard also is very abstract. You know, so many layers, so many shapes. I don't get it.
Yeah, there's just so much going on, and honestly, the grey colors with the hard plastics, they sort of give a very basic sort of outlook to this interior.
And in terms of practicality, not a lot that I can see in terms of space and storage.
Yeah, it's a good point that you brought out. See, there's so much space being wasted under the handbrake. And even this panel out here, like if I put my phone, it's not all that big, it's the normal size. It doesn't rest flat.
Since the USB ports are placed there and it's just a single port, yes, I don't think there's space for two phones there. And I think they could have used this space here for a nice armrest. That would have been a lot more comfortable.
Absolutely, and even this panel here, this recess, it could have been put to better use, like a storage shelf of sorts. But I mean, yeah, you can't place anything here right now.
Yeah. What is okay, I think, is the Smart Play Studio system in terms of just the functionality and the screen.
And what do you think of the seats and the space on offer?
Seats not too bad. I have got good amount of support. They're nice and soft as well. But again, I would have liked that armrest. I think it just adds so much more comfort. But overall, not too bad. Seats not bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, this is the most spacious car of the two. In fact, there's a good amount of space at the back. There's good knee room, there's good headroom, and it's pretty wide as well. One sore point is that neither of the two cars have rear headrests tall enough to save passengers from whiplash injuries in case of a collision. And while on the topic of space, let me also tell you that this car has a boot space of over 300 liters, which is incredible for a car of this price.
That is a lot. I mean, yeah, the boot is big enough already, but if you want even more space, you can also split the seats 60-40. I think that improves the overall practicality a lot more.
Absolutely.
With the static evaluation done, it was now time to talk about the other aspects.
Okay, so first things first, this is a 3-cylinder engine, but did you feel any vibrations, be it at idle or on the move right now?
Not at all, especially at the steering wheel, where you usually get the most. There is absolutely nothing, buttery smooth. I think very typical of a Maruti petrol engine, that's how they always feel.
Absolutely, the vibration on the seat, the clutch pedal, everything is so well controlled in this car. Now coming to the second part, now this is the 67 horsepower 1 litre engine, but it's the second generation of the K series engine. It's the K10C motor.
Like the earlier iteration, it still builds speed very smoothly and getting to cruising speeds is quite effortless.
But what I did notice over the 1,000 odd kilometers that I've been driving this car is that Maruti sort of seems to have deliberately restricted this engine's performance in the interest of emissions and efficiency.
I agree, and I think that is what you do feel, because if I remember the older car, it was a bit more responsive, and that with this
It
is
felt
missing.
freer, absolutely. It felt freer, it felt more free revving. This one, well, it does feel restricted in a way.
It does. But like I said, day-to-day driving not going to be that big of an issue. And since they have upped the efficiency, that is a big plus. So, I think people would take that any day, in exchange for a little bit of performance.
Absolutely. And while you've mentioned performance, this car is around 160 odd kilos lighter than the Tiago. So definitely it feels much quicker than the Tiago. And it's not only quicker, it's the more efficient of the two. Now, surprisingly, the city efficiency is just about 1.3 kpl more than the Tiago, but the highway efficiency, can you guess how much it was?
I can take a guess because of what I can see on this screen right here. It's already above 19, so I'm guessing somewhere around the 20 kpl mark.
It was 21, which is incredible for a petrol hatchback.
Exactly, and even though Marutis are known to be very fuel efficient, this figure is quite impressive, I have to agree.
And what's helping the Maruti's fuel efficiency is the automatic engine stop-start feature. Now, in the city, when you're stopped at a traffic light, it will automatically turn off the engine in order to save fuel while idling. And while on the highway, this has a much taller fifth gear.
It is, and you do feel that because we are around between 80 to 100 right now, and the engine is quite low in terms of RPM. I'm in fifth gear, and yeah, I can totally believe that. And that's what most owners would do, get to the higher gear and just stay there for long duration. And since we are on the topic of gearbox, I think this 5-speed manual is quite nice, very smooth in terms of shifts, and the clutch pedal is very, very light too.
Absolutely, it's effortless to use. And while on that topic, what do you think about the steering?
Well, it is light, breezy, very convenient to use, but I have one problem with it, and that is especially on tight turns and U-turns. You know what, I'll just show you right now. So, if I have to take a U-turn right now, okay, full lock, not a problem, turning circle is nice, but does not self-center, which means that added effort is required, and I think, that's not nice.
Yeah.
Now, one tough challenge the Celerio has against the Tiago is matching it or bettering it in terms of ride quality. Tata cars have always had their ride spot on, but to be honest, this doesn't feel that bad.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't feel as tough as the Tata to start with, but it's very comfortable. It takes on these smaller road imperfections quite well, and even at speeds, it's not all over the place like you would expect in a car with this curb weight.
Exactly, it is lighter than the Tiago, so you'd think highway stability would be affected. Not really.
Now it's time to get into the Tiago and see what the Tata is like.
Alright, so the Tiago, such a big difference instantly. I mean, just look at this interior, it doesn't feel like it belongs in the same segment as the Celerio. You have this dashboard that looks really nice, very minimalistic, but even the texture used on the plastic gives it a nice premium look.
Absolutely, it's hard to tell this is a 2016 car with just some minor modifications. In fact, even the two-tone color scheme, it looks quite nice, the grey and the black. And with these chrome inserts and, you also have a digital instrument cluster. Now, it is a bit small and it is not the easiest to read, but it's a good option to have at least.
All this is well and good, the chrome, the piano black, this is something you notice very often. What you do not notice that often is the roof liner, and on this, it is definitely a lot more premium. It's not that fabric feel that you get in the Celerio, definitely feels upmarket. Definitely feels more modern than that car, and lots of piano black used everywhere, and the big one, climate control.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me also tell you that while we are on this topic, the ACs in both the cars are actually very nice. they do a great job in the afternoon heat. But the climate control in this car, when you set it in auto mode, the blower is just too loud. So, I mean, I found myself manually reducing the fan speed and keeping it on 1 or 2 just to be comfortable.
Well, blower speed is loud, yes, but you can always counter that with the speakers. 8-speaker Harman system sounds so much better than that car.
Is just a class above. I mean, I think personally this is one of the best, if not the best, sound systems under 10 lakh in a hatchback.
100%. And speaking of infotainment, not a big difference in terms of screen size and even the usability. You know, it's slick, it's responsive. Not a lot to do in either of the cars, but it gets the job done. Other aspect which I really like is the added practicality. You get a better, larger cubby hole, which means you can fit more stuff in here and a lot of nifty places to keep your loose change and stuff.
Absolutely. And speaking of practicality, we should also talk about space. And in that aspect, I think it's a little narrower, the cabin. We feel like we're sitting a bit closer. But the seat itself is quite comfortable. Now, this one gets aftermarket seat covers. And it's quite broad, quite nice, but I think it's a little flat.
Yeah, it doesn't have the bolster support that you get on the Maruti. But like you said, overall support is nice and it is quite comfortable to sit as well. And what I especially like is the height at which you are seated. You know, nice and high, you get a good amount of view out. So, you know, it's really nice and SUV-ish. I know you probably wouldn't like it, but for me as a passenger, I think it's nice to get a nice tall look.
Yeah, now that you've brought this topic up, yeah, I do prefer a much lower driving position. This feels as though I'm sitting in an SUV of sorts. And even the steering is sort of angled. The stalks are a bit of a stretch for my fingers, and this aircon is blowing cold air on my hand. It cannot be, these vents cannot be closed. But yeah, I'm just nitpicking.
Yeah, these are really small aspects that probably owners can overlook.
Yeah.
Given the overall car is, you know, feels a lot better. And a lot of owners would also be seated in the back. Space in the back, not too bad.
Not too bad actually. In fact, it has the better seat, to be honest. Yeah. There's more support in general, but space is at a premium. Headroom, knee room, not as good as the Celerio for sure.
This also has a shorter wheelbase, so I think that is one of the reasons. And where space is also at a premium is in the boot.
Yeah, the boot is smaller than the Celerio, and the fact that it doesn't get 60-40 split rear seats, it just loses out some points on flexibility.
Right.
Okay, now that we have the interiors covered, let's get driving.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, off the line, and immediately what I notice is the NVH levels, the vibrations from the engine. Something we really, you know, appreciated on the Celerio. Very smooth, very nice. On this, even in the passenger seat, I can feel the vibes.
Yeah, absolutely. And those especially at idle. While on the move, they do smoothen out a bit.
What about the response?
Honestly, I think this is the more responsive engine of the two. It feels much freer than the Celerios. And that restricted sort of feeling that you were getting in the Celerio, that's not the case with this car.
But in terms of outright performance, I think Celerio still beats it.
Yeah, absolutely. But flat out performance is one thing, but daily drivability is an altogether different subject. And in that subject, this car scores really well. It's even better than the Celerio in drivability. You can pot around in a higher gear at a lower engine speed, and you don't need to downshift that often. And responses, like I mentioned earlier, it's much nicer than the Celerio. I think in terms of drivability, this is the better engine of the two. But having said that, this engine is not as smooth as the Celerio in terms of power delivery. It has some hiccups on the way till its red line. So yeah, power delivery is a bit choppy. It's not as well tuned as the Celerio. And in terms of daily usability, the clutch is quite light, although the travel is more than the Celerios. And even the gear shifts, they're smooth, but not buttery smooth like in the Celerio.
Now the gearbox might not be buttery smooth, but the steering has a good amount of consistency, I feel, better than the Celerio.
Absolutely. I mean, to start with, the steering feels great to hold. It's nice, thick, flat bottom, very sporty. And in terms of absolute effort, it's effortless to use. It's light in the city, it weighs up well on the highway, And when you are driving it fast around corners, it infuses confidence in the driver.
Well, speaking of driving fast, you also need to stop at some point, and I think the braking on this is nice as well. I mean, it's nice and sharp, strong.
Yeah, you'll be surprised actually. The braking, definitely, the pedal feel is much sharper in this car than in the Celerios. But in our tests, in panic braking tests from 80 kilometers to a complete standstill, the Celerio is actually the one that stops in a shorter distance than the Tiago.
Well, I suppose that could have something to do with the extra weight the Tiago carries, a lot more momentum to stop.
Yeah, it's around 160 kilos heavier. That's almost the weight of both of us combined.
Yeah, I think that's more, but okay, I'll take that. On the subject of ride quality, we said in the Celerio it's a tough task to beat Tata. Both of these ride on 15-inch wheels, and yet I feel the Celerio is slightly better in terms of bump absorption, all these small cracks and undulations on the road. You feel a lot more in this car.
Yeah, absolutely, and it comes as a surprise because Tatas are known to be pliant and
Yeah.
really comfortable, but this one, it does feel a bit stiffer, a bit more jittery. There's a little more movement in this car. Even though we are not driving that fast, there's always some movement of the other, and these are those sharp movements, so it's not as comfortable, I think, as the Celerio.
Now, ride quality might be a Tata forte, and the Maruti has pipped the Tiago in that sense, but efficiency is always a Maruti strong point, and that shows. Sadly, this is not as efficient as that.
Before giving you the verdict, let's take a look at what features the top spec variants of these cars pack. The Tiago is clearly the one that gets the premium kit like projector headlamps, automatic climate control, the fantastic Harman speaker setup, and even digital instrument cluster. Sure, the Tiago packs in more, but it also costs more than the Maruti.
So Jay, it's finally time to answer the question, which is the better buy of the two?
Well, to be honest, both cars have their positives and negatives. The Celerio is a bit more practical, it rides well, and it is a lot more frugal as well. But at the same time, the interior just doesn't match up. The dash is too basic, there's not a lot on offer, and crucially, it hasn't been crash tested by Global NCAP yet.
Speaking of which, the Tiago has proved its mettle by securing 4 stars in Global NCAP crash tests. That aside, it has the better, well-appointed cabin, more features, and it truly delivers on Tata's more car per car promise. Yes, performance, efficiency, and even space might not be as good as the Celerio, but look at it in isolation and it's not all that bad either. At the end of the day, the Tiago, it's a little more expensive than the Celerio, but it's offering you much better value, and I think that's the reason why we should declare that car, the Tata Tiago, as the winner of this comparison.
I agree.
हो रहा है क्या?
रैप कर दो यार।
अरे BTS नहीं डालते आजकल।
डालो ना तो।
कौन कर रहा है? मोहित करेगा ना ये एडिट।
In Global NCAP crash tests. That aside,
दोनों बार क्रैश बोला तू।
Crash.
crash, Gujju accent.